Welcome to the Spirit of Autism web TV show, offering practical tools, tips, and support for you and your loved ones with autism. I'm your host, Debbie Taylor, and back in the studio with me today is my good friend, Austin Harris. How you doing, Austin?
Doing good, Debbie, doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining me today. And
Definitely.
Austin, you really saved my bacon this week because we had a pre-recorded interview with Adventure to Fitness all lined up, but the technology gods were not shining down upon me favorably this week. So instead, we're going to talk about sensory processing issues. It is my belief that 98% of what we perceive to be as behavior issues in people with autism are really just their bodies reacting to sensory overwhelm. Do you agree with that?
I do. A lot of times, for me, a person with autism, I have a lot of hearing and visual sensory issues. And for me, it's a lot of times just out in public, every day, stuff gets to you, and just it can be overwhelming for me even, and I can just only imagine what it is like for other people as well.
Right, and sensory issues, could be, sensitive hearing, hypersensitivity to touch, smell, taste. It could be lights. It could be any combination of those. And it really does put a person's nervous system in overwhelm, and then typically as parents and teachers and caregivers we try to address the behavior because that's what we're seeing. But what we really need to be doing is reducing the sensory triggers and get that person out of defense mode, and that will really open up the mind for communication and learning.
A lot of what you have to do with persons with autism when they're in sensory meltdown, as I like to say, if a person's in sensory meltdown, you need to distract them or remove them from the environment in which the sensory issue is coming from. So you want to either remove the person or try to distract them with something, usually something they like to talk about. I know with a lot of times with autistic persons, they have a item or a subject they really enjoy talking about, or just really enjoy in general. So if you get them on to talk about that, or say, look over here, here's Mario, or look over here, here's your Scooby-Doo.
Or giving them a job to do,
giving them a job.
Right? Stacking something, or
say, hold this for me, or count the number, if you're in the grocery store, for instance, count the number of cereals in the cereal aisle. So just stuff like that.
And then my son would want all of them.
And he'd want all of them, and I would too, for that matter, because I'd be like, oh, you got Chex Mix, and you got all that, and I'm like, oh, Cheerios. So
right.
It would be good.
So in a classroom setting, I guess what sensory overwhelm could look like, I guess there's no background filter. And so a person sitting in a classroom with autism would hear the teacher talking, and then they would also hear students moving around in their seats and shuffling papers. They'd hear the clock ticking very loudly. Water, tapping the pencil to think, maybe something going on outside in the hallway. Maybe there's some people running by. Maybe there's somebody mowing the lawn or blowing leaves outside. And all of those sounds are in their face at the same volume, not just at the same volume, but times 10, right? It's magnified, and so it makes it incredibly difficult for them to know what they're supposed to be focusing on or listening to. And do you experience that as an adult?
I do. And with me, it's certain frequencies, certain sounds that really get to me the most, and certain types of lights, certain times of day, even times of day where the sun's at different locations in the horizon, and also at night. Driving can be a little difficult sometimes with the different types of lights we've got on cars. Some are brighter, some are less bright, so it can be difficult. So I experience a lot of that.
And frequency is a good point, because sometimes you see the vacuum cleaner might be fine for somebody at home, but the blender sets them off or something like that. So it's not necessarily volume, but frequency. Now, as an adult, how have you learned to cope with some of these sounds?
Really, the best thing I've done is I've found coping skills or things to occupy my mind. Like if I see something interesting on the wall over there, or see something on the monitor. Like, a lot of times in restaurants is where it gets to me. So if I focus on one of the TVs in the restaurant, if there's a baseball game on or some show I'm really interested in, or they're playing a interesting song, I try to focus on that. And a lot of times I also try to focus on conversation. If I can focus the one-on-one with another person, it often helps a lot for me.
So even within the studio today, do you hear all different noises and buzzing?
I hear the
like
computers, I hear the hum of the lights and the hum of the air conditioning and just everything, the noises down the hall and all that stuff.
And before you had those coping skills, it would get too much for you. And then
it would get too much for me, and I just, for a long time, I didn't understand it. I didn't understand what I was going through and what I was experiencing. So I had to understand it first. And once I understood it, I was like, okay, there's things I can do for that. There's ways I can cope with it, and things I can do to prevent it.
That's great, and that's actually a good segue, because once I understood what was happening with my son and how and it's not always sound with everybody. It could be lights or anything, but I think even before we had an autism diagnosis, one day we were playing cards at home, and by the way, he's fantastic at cards. Don't ever bet against my son. Yes, but anyway, we were playing cards. Everything was great, and nice, quiet. Everything. We decided to go to the mall, to the food court at lunchtime, not knowing anything about sensory autism or anything, right? And I had really long hair back then. And we go to the food court, and I have my daughter and my son with me, and he just turns into a monster. I mean, he starts swinging off my hair, climbing on the counters, doing all these things, and I thought, what is wrong with this child behavior? I thought he wants something, and it wasn't that he saw a game that he wanted and I didn't let him have it. He was just insane. And then he turned around and covered his ears and just yelled, "Everybody be quiet," like that. And that was the first time I was like, wait a minute, just wait a minute. And then I started to research the sensory issues, and once I understood what was going on with him, I wanted him to understand, just like you were saying, because I didn't think he knew what was happening to him either. And in school, that really created a problem, because he would, during transitions from quiet circle time to the noisy gym, he would get out of control. The teachers would perceive it as a behavior issue. And then he, of course, they didn't remove him from that situation or help him, and it spiraled out of control. And they would call me 3 times a week to leave work and come pick him up, because they couldn't, quote unquote, reel him in. And so I thought, how can I get him to understand what's happening to his body and talk about his needs? And, feelings and needs are challenging, especially if you don't know what's going on with you.
Definitely.
So we created a number system, because his mind is very logical and linear, and numbers really, he communicates in numbers better than words. And he also loves Super Mario.
Oh, Super Mario.
So we made emotional stage index cards together, and I let him draw them. And so we have 5 cards numbered 1 through 5, and they have different faces on them. And I'm not sure if the camera's going to be able to see him or not.
Well, you can kind of see him, yeah.
Maybe you can hold them up while I talk about him. But anyway, that's Mario with a really happy face, and that's card number 1. And that means that when he's a number 1, he's feeling great, his body feels fine, no sensory overwhelm, everything's cool. And then we made number 2, which is Mario with a smaller smile. And that's still feeling pretty good. And my goal for him every day, dropping him off at school, was to make sure he was at a 1 or a 2 before I left. Because if he were over that, I would have to do some sensory exercises with him and things like that. And then we have number 3. Mario's starting to feel kind of squirrely, as we call it, or not so good.
He's feeling a little sour there.
Yeah, and that's, body's acting up, feeling a little overwhelmed, not sure what's going on. And I will have these on my blog tomorrow. If anybody cannot see these, I will post them on my blog. Number 4 is Mario's having a really hard time.
He's having a bad day.
And he is about to go into overwhelm unless there's some kind of intervention. And that intervention could be either him self-calming in a way that we've talked about, or him asking for help in an appropriate way. And then card number 5 is full meltdown mode. you have to ride it out.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we never hit 5. I'm not saying
no.
this cured sensory overwhelm, but helping him identify, check in with himself, check in with the teachers, check in with me, having that number system really helped him learn what was going on with him. And like I said, he could ask for help appropriately, or he could go excuse himself and go in a sensory tent or listen to music or do something to calm down, and it made it okay for him. And it really, really helped him identify with his feelings, and not just for school. It helped us at home. It still helps us. It helps us in public. So that's definitely one of the ways that once I learned what was going on, I taught him.
And again, with me, sometimes it just took experimenting. It just took kind of learning what upsets me, what causes me to get into a sensory meltdown or get into a autism meltdown. Just the things that get to me the most. Can I stay away from those places? Are there ways I can go to them and redirect my thoughts and redirect my attention? So it's sometimes just you have to live through it and figure it out kind of yourself too. One thing you were talking about at school, with me, a lot of times at school it helps to have a team together. You want to have some teachers, maybe a counselor, and that's what I had at my school. And I had a teacher that I became very close with. Well, this teacher, she had an idea where she would give me a permanent hall pass. And she gave me a permanent hall pass, and I was instructed by the principal and all the people that were in charge that if I had to leave or if I got upset, I could go see her anytime. I'd just show them this hall pass and I'd go see my teacher.
Great.
Who really cared about me and just was really, who understood me more and just understood how to take care of me and how to calm me down and how to make everything okay. And so I would use that, and I'd go to this special teacher who would take care of me.
That is just priceless. I love that you had that support. I can't say there was the same thing
I know.
in the school. The schools are so overwhelmed, understaffed, and in some cases uneducated about the full...
And that's another thing. People need to become more educated, not just for autistic persons, but across the board with all kinds of disabilities and diseases and even just heart disease out there. You need to be aware that some people have physical limitations or some people have mental limitations. So it's good to educate yourself, and even as parents and as people with these different things, you need to educate yourself and learn more about it, and you'll find out that you will be able to cope with it, and you'll be able to come together and cope with it as a family, as a unit, as a team even. A lot of times it's good to have more than one person. You have a school teacher, a counselor from somewhere, a doctor, family members, and you want to have them all together and meet every once in a while and then talk about the different things and strategies and what you observe and stuff like that. For me, I have my parents, and I let them go to all the doctor's appointments with me. I basically keep them in the loop, because if I become where I'm not coherent or I'm not able to make the rational decisions, they're there in lieu of me and can make those decisions for me.
Right.
And they can also be there to help me calm down. So it's a team thing, and it's team support.
And education really is key, because before I really knew what was going on, we would just go out in public. We would go, on vacation or to the store, to a restaurant, or to a festival, and things got overwhelming for my son, but I didn't really understand, so I saw it as a behavior problem, and, it sort of makes you a victim when you don't know what's going on. But once we knew, we could pack the headphones and let him put them on if it got overwhelming for him. We could always have an exit strategy. Never go in the same car with somebody when we're going to an event, because we may have to leave. That's just the reality of it. nothing wrong with it, but we always have to have a plan
Mm-hmm.
and an exit strategy and tools for him to take that are going to help him.
Mm-hmm.
There's not always going to be a sensory tent to escape to,
Mm-hmm.
but, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
anything we could do to ensure that he has the ability to take a break or remove himself from a situation.
Definitely. And these days there's laws that people have to follow. There's the Persons with Disabilities Act.
Mm-hmm.
A person with autism or a person with disability is entitled to certain special treatments and entitled to certain things within this law, and people need to realize that, and people need to go out there, especially moms and dads, they need to go out there and research this and find out what you may be entitled to at your child's school, or even as an adult with their work or employment.
That's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, I wish I knew about that when we flew, because there was a certain airline when my son was younger that asked us never to return because, you know, they thought his behavior was out of control. I really didn't think it was terrible. I've seen neurotypical children acting much worse. I've seen adults acting much worse.
Oh, yes.
But anyway, but yeah, so an airline had asked us never to return, and we haven't flown in about 8 years.
That's a
because
shame.
of that.
Because I've flown. It's once you figure out how to get on it and how to do it, it works. It's like riding a bicycle. And for me, I just had to figure out, okay, what are the things I need to avoid? For me, I was deathly terrified of the trains in the airport that were unmanned, and they made all these noises, even walking.
Grinding,
the
right?
grinding,
Yeah.
and the fact that they were unmanned, too, and just the noise they would make as they go by the different stops and stations within the airport. I would, as a child, when we travel, I would walk in the very middle of those little stations within the airport, and would refuse to get on them. To this day and age, I just get on the moving sidewalk at the airport. And for those that don't know, we're in Atlanta, so we have Hartsfield-Jackson, so
Busiest airport in the world now,
one of the
isn't
busiest airports in the world, so that can be a chaotic place even for me. So you want to
Atlanta's a chaotic place.
Atlanta is a chaotic place, so you want to learn what's available to you, what works best for you, and use it to your advantage.
That's a great point. Let's see. You also have a couple of preparedness. Last time you were on the show, we talked about disaster preparedness. And I know there was a couple announcements about some things happening in September.
September is National Preparedness Month, so this is the month where we try to get all citizens in the United States and abroad to basically get prepared just in case of a disaster or a natural event, or even something as much as terrorism. I know right now we're having the threat of this ISIS or ISIL, so you want to make certain preparations for stuff. And I mean, not even just terrorism, I mean everyday events such as a power outage after a storm. I know we had some friends just the other day, we had a severe thunderstorm come by with heavy winds, and they lost power for about 3 or 4 hours, and it was,
And in some cases, it's a couple of days
some
because of,
cases
you know,
it's a
a
couple
major
days.
metro area. It can be a couple of days that you're without resources.
And there may be trees down all over the place and over more than just one power line in your neighborhood, so it'll take a while to get it back up and running. But this individual that I'm speaking of, they have a medical device which uses electricity. It was getting near bedtime, and they have to use this device during bedtime. So they needed to use this. Well, they couldn't because they didn't have power. So you want to make arrangements to either go somewhere, or go to a friend's, or just prepare for the unexpected like that.
Have a kit.
Have
right?
a kit,
We talked
make a
about
plan,
that last time.
stay informed.
That's excellent.
And you can go to ready.gov, and they have a lot of good information on there about preparedness and things you can do to mitigate for your family and in your area. And just even in your car, you want to have a little something. I know with the winter storms, we had a lot of people stuck all throughout the southeast on the highways and on the streets and everything.
Oh, yes.
So you want to have a little something in your car, maybe at work, something at home and something
water,
protein bars, just a little
first aid,
energy
blanket.
snacks, first aid. You want to have a blanket, a fire extinguisher in your car. You want to have a fire extinguisher in your kitchen at home, flashlight, stuff like that. So, National Preparedness Month, everyone needs to get ready.
That's good. I did not want to forget about that.
Definitely.
And I guess to go back to sensory, we talked a lot about hearing, but some people have, touch issues as well. Like, for instance, my son, if you touch him lightly, like, hey, good job, buddy, he will recoil in pain as if he's just been shocked. And yet, when he's acting out, I need to bear hug him in order to calm his nervous system down. So he's both hyper and hyposensitive to touch. But you see a lot of times people can't wear tags on their shirt because it feels like a cactus, and they have to wear seamless socks, or in my son's case, no clothes at all as often as possible. But anyway, so it could be being a picky eater because they don't like the texture of foods. It could be touch. It could be balance and coordination and things like that. Like, a lot of times they don't know where their body ends and space begins, and so they don't know if they're sitting up straight in a chair or about to fall over, or they don't, and if I can only imagine what that feels like. I'm sure some of us may have chosen to feel like that on a Friday night, but voluntarily. Anyway, not me ever.
Another thing I think of when I think of sensory and stuff like that is even the temperature of a drink could affect someone. If it was too cold, it might really affect them, or if it was even too warm, it might just be really bad and just not really affect them.
Or the opposite of that, again, a lot of times people with autism don't feel temperature. And so they could burn themselves or hurt themselves and not even know that they have an injury.
Like, for instance, a lot of people like apple cider during the holidays, and we're getting to the holidays too.
Don't remind me.
Get out there and do your holiday shopping.
No.
But a lot of us like apple cider around the holidays, around Halloween and stuff like that. Well, usually you boil that and make that boiling hot. Well, you don't want to just...
I wouldn't know. I'm from New York.
I would. I'm from the South. But you want to make sure, if you have an autistic child or an autistic person or someone who may be prone to injuries such as that, you want to make sure that if you're giving them something warm or hot, you want to make sure it's either cool enough for them to drink and cool enough so they won't burn themselves as well.
Right.
And that can go for soups and foods and just everything in general.
And yeah, not feeling temperature is really challenging now with hopefully colder weather upon us. I'm hoping, because this is like the longest summer ever. But anyway, yeah, just getting someone to wear a coat. If they don't feel that it's cold out, then their logical brain goes, why do I need to wear a coat if I'm not cold? Right? But, we have to sometimes step in and do the right thing.
And with a coat, it may be the sensory with the touch. It may not. It may feel itchy. It may feel painful. It may feel scratchy to them. So you want to look into different products out there that may be suitable. Try them on. I always like to try on a coat because you never know if it's going to fit. With me having a large belly, but anyways, you want to with an autistic person, you want to make sure the coat's not going to affect them. Have them try it on. Take them with you when you buy it, and have them just try it on and see if they like it. If they like it, you just won the battle. So, and they'll probably never take it off.
Yeah. Well, and I guess our whole point about discussing sensory processing is because I think there's so many people out there that still just don't know about it.
Definitely.
And they see the behaviors.
And they just don't
and they address the
understand it.
behaviors because they don't know what else to do. I have been there. I've pulled my hair out. I have wondered what I have done wrong as a parent. I have wondered what was going on. But once you can understand all the sensory stuff, then it really opens the door to start working on the other issues, because I think that when you reduce sensory triggers, the mind is more open to communication and learning.
Definitely.
And so, again, I'm going to have these index cards and some more resources on my website by tomorrow, which is spiritofautism.org. And if you think that you've seen some of these behaviors in your child or someone that you're in the care of, or maybe you're a teacher and you have a child in the classroom that's acting out in some of the ways we described, I invite you to look at some sensory issues, and maybe you can really go above and beyond and figure out what's going on and help somebody.
Definitely, and that's what it's all about. It's all about helping each other.
Do you have anything else to add?
I don't think so. I think just helping each other is always good, and
and you helped me by being here,
definitely.
so thank you.
And I would say that teachers a lot of times will see it first. My mom being a 4-year-old teacher, she sees it early. So teachers are some of our best tools to catch autism and to first intervene into what may be wrong with the child or what may be a problem with the child, and maybe the first to see it and the first to be able to help fix it or understand it more. So I encourage teachers especially.
Well, thank you so much.
Definitely.
And everybody stay tuned for next month's show, where we will air the interview with Adventure to Fitness. You're going to love it. It's just such an awesome product that helps make fitness fun for people. And you just don't think fitness and fun fit in the same sentence, but they do. So
They do.
tune in for that next month, and thank you for joining us.